Thank you so much for being here and welcome to our training on edutainment. So before we get started, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. And before I introduce myself, I just want to give a quick shout out to my colleague Jessica Jewell, the Director of Digital here at WaterHub, who is helping us behind the scenes by managing the chat and some of the webinar tech. So if you see your name pop up in the webinar chat, just don't be alarmed. It's just Jessica. So thank you, Jessica. And I'm Brianna. I'm Brianna Flynn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm based in the Bay Area in California. I am WaterHub's content producer and strategist. And so, what that means is I basically create a lot of the visual content for our social channels and for our partner organizations. And that includes everything from short documentaries, motion graphic explainers, graphics with tips for the water movement and communication, behind the scenes glimpses into our work, and then of course, edutainment. And my background is in video production and video journalism. And in the past, I've produced stories on science, culture, and in the environment. Before this, I produced short documentaries for The Guardian and for PBS. And I was also a video producer with Wired, where I created specifically content specifically for their YouTube channel. And then I'll pass it over to Zakia to introduce herself.
Well, thank you kindly. Hi, y'all. I'm Zakia Taylor, she, her pronouns. I'm based down south in North Carolina, and I'm the communications manager here at WaterHub. My work includes managing our day-to-day social media presence, executing our digital strategy, and contributing to our collective storytelling work. I also develop social media toolkits and digital content strategies for our partners. My background includes both on the ground and digital organizing. Prior to joining WaterHub, I worked with a nonprofit here in North Carolina focused on organizing and building political power in rural communities across the state. I managed our socials, created digital content, wrote our newsletter on political education, and developed some digital strategies that mirrored our local deep canvassing work. Thank y'all again for joining us today.
So, without further ado, we just wanted to go over a little bit about what we're planning to cover today in our presentation. So, here's our agenda. First, we're going to start by setting the stage a little bit. We're going to talk about why and how we use social media as organizations. And then we're going to talk about edutainment. What even is that? We are going to find out together. We'll discuss why edutainment is valuable to your organization. We are, experimenting ourselves with edutainment, and we'll talk through some examples of what we've done and how they've performed. And we'll also share some recent examples from others. And then we'll provide some tips so that you guys can all make your foray into the edutainment world and make your own work. And then after that, hopefully we'll have some time for some questions and answers.
Thank you. Thank you. So, before we dive into edutainment, let's step back and think about why our organizations use social media in the first place. At the simplest level, it's about meeting people where they already are. Social media is where many of us gather, connect with others, and increasingly where we get our information about the world. According to Neiman Lab, social media has become the number one space for people to get their news, and that's ahead of TV, print, and even direct visits to news sites. But this phenomenon isn't just restricted to news. Research from the Sprout Social Index shows that across generations, people use social media to keep up with cultural moments and trends. In other words, social media isn't just niche or for youth only. It's reflecting a broader shift in how people stay connected to what matters. For organizations like yours, this means that social media functions as your digital front door. Before someone visits your website or shows up to an event, they're likely encountering your work in their feed. The work that you all do is critical and often already uplifted in traditional news sources, especially locally. But if your goal is to reach beyond your audiences that already know you, social media is one of the most effective ways to connect. And I'll pass it back to Brianna.
Thanks, Zakia. So, like Zakia said, social media is a really important tool for your work and the issues that you cover to be discovered by the people who need to see it, which is great, right? That sounds good. But just because you post something on a social platform, that doesn't necessarily mean or automatically mean that the people that you want to see that content are going to see it. I don't know if any of you have scrolled social media lately, but it is a really noisy, crowded place. There is a lot of content and information and people vying for attention. And somebody who you're trying to reach, they might be scrolling their feed and making a decision about whether to engage with your content or watch your video within seconds. It really happens that fast. And so, with that in mind, how is it that you can actually reach the people that you're trying to reach? And so, to kind of answer that question, we're going to do a little exercise together. I'm going to kind of share an example, a hypothetical example of a person who maybe you'd want to take an interest in your work. And then we're going to think about how this person might actually use social media in their daily life. So, without further ado, this is Emily. She is feeling a little overwhelmed, as you can see. She is an environmental journalist. She covers the environment for a national media outlet, and she cares really deeply about humanity, justice, and protecting nature. These are the values that got her into the line of work that she's in, and she's super committed to this work, even though it's a really uncertain time in media, and it's a really deeply uncertain time period. She's looking at the news like the rest of us, and feeling overwhelmed by what she sees and concerned about the future. She has to keep up with the news for her work, and she wants to keep up with the news just to be an informed human being, but it's an exhausting process. So, often after work, she'll go on Instagram, she'll look at funny reels, catch up with her friends, and she just kind of uses it to turn her brain off for a little bit. And she's, like a lot of us, trying to be a little bit more intentional about her social media use for her own mental health. She's aiming to limit her time on Instagram to just 20 minutes, but sometimes she slips because she's human. Um, so with all of that in mind, I wanted to throw it to all of our attendees here, and if you can put in the chat, I'm curious, what you guys think, what kind of content you think that would reach Emily, knowing a little bit about her and how she uses social media. And we'll give you guys a little bit of time to put some answers in the chat. And again, the question is, knowing a little bit about Emily, what kind of content do you think would reach her? This is a person who is a little overwhelmed by the news, but she goes on Instagram to unwind. Something that's fun, that's not doom content. Yes, Danny. Oh my gosh, yes. I can just relate to that personally. Short and sweet, cute, uplifting stories, short videos or carousels, humor-based videos that connect to her interests. Yes. Feel good content about society and the world, addressing issues and offering simple solutions. We are all for this. You guys are on it. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Danielle. It's good to see you in the chat. Yeah, yeah, all of these are really great answers. And, I think it probably comes as no surprise that we agree with you and that we think edutainment is, one of those things that could engage Emily. So without further ado, I'm going to let Zakia break down that term a little bit.
Thank you kindly. So let us answer that big question. What even is edutainment? At its core, it's exactly what it sounds like, a blend of education and entertainment. But more specifically, it's the use of playful and engaging content to deliver real information about the issues that matter. For those of us who work in climate and water, striking that balance is really important. The topics that we cover are scientific and complex. The stakes are high, and the information load can get a little heavy. Traditional media does a great job of delivering that deep, detailed issue coverage, but that same level of detail doesn't always translate well on social. Social platforms are built for bite-sized content. As Brianna mentioned earlier, viewers decide whether they want to engage or scroll from a post in seconds. So when we package important information into a format that people that already engage with, we're creating a more approachable entry point for a curious and values-aligned audience. We also have to remember that on social media, people connect with people. Edutainment gives organizations a space to kind of show their humanity, break a little tension, and be self-aware about the fact that, yes, we are nerdy about this work a little bit. That kind of authenticity builds familiarity and it lowers the barrier to engagement. So, knowing that our digital spaces are already fast-paced and attention scarce, using humor or familiarity or storytelling is a much more effective way to get folks to engage with your content. It hits that sweet spot of keeping people informed without overwhelming them. And then when you do it well, edutainment builds trust. It helps information stick. And it increases the likelihood that your content travels further without compromising your organizational credibility. But what does this look like in practice? The good news is that it does not mean your organization needs a standing TikTok dance session on the calendar. One of the buckets I think that we're all familiar with is the meme. Fun fact, the term was first coined by biologist Richard Dawkins in 1976 to describe a unit of cultural transmission. That means an idea, a behavior, or a style or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. And that definition still holds up. As we know them today, digital memes are cultural currency. They're bite-sized pieces of pop culture or popular content that distill a feeling or a mutual experience. And their rapid shareability makes them quickly recognizable to a very broad audience. That recognition is key. Memes tap into something that your audience already understands and connects with. And because humor is a great frame to invite conversation and participation, applying that to your issue areas makes it easier for folks to engage with you. If you want to see some great edutainment in action, I highly recommend checking out Teal or Western Water Girl on Instagram. That's where we got these two memes on the screen from. The second bucket is original video. In this context, it doesn't mean like highly produced content, but rather quick recordings that, mirror a trend of a video first social media landscape. For organizations, that could look like a quick explainer video using trending audio, a parody or spoof with your issues at the forefront, or behind the scenes footage of the work happening on the ground. Whether you're using memes or video, both content forms allow you to bring your audience into your world and deliver the information that you already know in a really fun way. But why does it work? Why is creating something that's fun actually a functional strategy? Well, it starts with digital behavior. Traditionally, social platforms are used by people, as we said earlier, to connect, be entertained, and unwind from their daily lives. Content that is dense or overly complex could encourage people to scroll, but this attitude is changing. Research from Sprout Social from just last year found that more and more audiences want content that both entertains them and teaches them something useful. So, edutainment works because it meets people in the context of how they already engage on social media instead of fighting it. And there's strong research behind why that approach is powerful. In communication research, there's this well documented concept called narrative transportation. That transportation is what happens when someone gets pulled into a story. Their attention is focused, their guard is lowered, and they're more open to accepting the information that's packaged in the content. Peer reviewed research constantly finds that higher transportation is associated with greater acceptance of the message inside the story. If you really want to nerd out with us, Check out some of the initial research on narrative transportation from Green and Brock from 2000 and the Slit review that brings it back from 2024. And while the word edutainment is relatively new, the concept isn't. Entertainment education, or EE for short, is already a well-established and research-based communications approach that intentionally puts educational messages inside of entertaining content. That content could include storylines, or humor, or character-driven media. Many of us grew up with Sesame Street, or watched educational shows on PBS, or we learned what a bill was from Schoolhouse Rock. And that sticks with us. So, across public health, education, and media research, there's a pattern in the application of EE. When accurate information is delivered through an engaging narrative format, it's more likely to shift attitudes than straightforward informational messaging alone. Today's social platforms also reinforce that dynamic through their recommendation systems, or what we broadly refer to as the algorithm. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube all prioritize signals like watch time, completion, and shares when they determine what content they want to distribute more widely. So, content that holds attention performs better in these systems, which means that entertaining formats have a structural advantage in reaching an audience. So, the research, the audience data, and the algorithms are all pointing in the same direction. In a very saturated social landscape, edutainment is strategic. I'll pass it to Brianna to share some of our own examples.
Yes, and like Kia said, it can be really strategic. I was a huge fan of PBS shows, and I'm a Reading Rainbow nerd. So I don't know if there are any of other Reading Rainbow nerds out there, but like LeVar Burton says, you don't have to take our word for it. We've seen the value of edutainment firsthand through our own content and our own experiments with edutainment. We've been kind of toying with the format over the past couple of years, and those experiments have yielded some pretty impressive results. So we wanted to share a few examples of those pieces of edutainment content and share a little bit more about how it did, how it performed. So our first example is a 2-minute video. We called it Planet Beaver. And we posted it on Instagram and YouTube Shorts, and we'll watch it in just a second, but just some background on how this came together. So we made it for International Beaver Day last year, and it's basically one of those social media observances that gives us a good excuse to bring more visibility to the information and the narratives that we already want to elevate. So we used it as an opportunity to highlight these amazing creatures, beavers, and their benefits to water ecosystems. And we thought it was a good chance to experiment a little bit and indulge some of our more unhinged ideas in delivering that information. And it was also a really good chance for one member of our team to show off her amazing British accent. So let's go ahead and watch it.
Behold the beaver, nature's most ambitious engineers, builder of dams. If you build it, they will come. Creator of habitats, adorable, charismatic, cult leaders, and their believers, devout disciples of the chew, the build, and the change. Their mantra is simple: slow, spread, sink. For that is what beaver dams do to water. And in the process, they leave behind happy wildlands, ecstatic wetlands, aquifers so recharged they could take on the world. They are defenders from drought, combaters of climate change. Their wetland wonderlands trap carbon and keep soil quenched during dry periods. But wait, are they also firefighters? Indeed, by keeping landscapes wetter, they too can prevent forest fires. Ah, that waddle. Those hips. The power. The athleticism and grace. Are you a beaver believer yet? Because this is the kind of soggy bottom we can get behind. What a goofy project. Love it. Okay, bye.
Okay, we had so much fun making that. Hey, like, give it up for Zakia. Um, so we didn't just have a good time making it, but it actually, we wanted to share a little bit of how this video did. So let's look at the numbers. On Instagram, this video did really, really well. Planet Beaver was our number one post of 2025. And just a note, that's excluding collaborative posts. So it's not including posts that we co-published with influencers with bigger audience. This is just our uh, small but mighty audience. And then, that's both in terms of views and engagements, which is just an indication of how many people are interacting with the content, and it's a good indicator of audience interest as well. And we saw a 7-ish percentage engagement rate, which is just engagements over reach. And that is a really, really high percentage for the nonprofit industry, which averages at about 1 to 3%. So definitely punching above our weight there. And then, it did really well on YouTube as well. It was our second most viewed YouTube short as well. So the numbers tell a pretty strong success story, but only numbers are only part of the story. So we're going to look at some qualitative measures as well, which the comment section. I don't know if you've seen an internet comment section lately, but they're not always nice or on topic. And so we got some really, really encouraging and like top tier comments from our audience. People were definitely fans of this video. They wanted merch. They wanted a series. People were showing appreciation and asking for more. This one is my favorite comment. Bravo, let's give it up for nature's engineers and firefighters. And the reason I love it so much is because it uses one of the phrases from the video itself, nature's engineers and firefighters. And what that tells me is that not only did this person watch the video, but they like paid attention enough to kind of grasp some of the phrasing that we were using. And that is absolutely not a given when it comes to social video. People are not necessarily paying that close attention. So we really captured that person's attention. And then there was just some general positive vibes that we got. Best video I've ever seen, OMG. And nice damn beaver or nice damn beaver. I don't totally know how that one's supposed to be read. There needs to be a comma in there, but appreciated nonetheless. And then this is a sort of a bonus, but not necessarily about our social media performance per se, but one of our colleagues emailed the video to some journalists she has a relationship with, journalists who cover beavers in their work. And, it wasn't for any particular reason with any particular agenda. It was just kind of a way to put a smile on their face and build a relationship. And we got some really great responses, also very attentive responses. Devout disciple of the two build and change, cult leaders, the believers are expanding. It's hard not to get a smile out of those guys. So all in all, this video got a lot of positive feedback and performed pretty darn well. So yeah, we wanted to share another example, and so I'll pass it over to Zakia to do that.
Thank you kindly. So, as another example, we created a meme in 2024 about PFAS contamination in Tucson's water supply. And alongside this, we were talking about the Supreme Court decision that overturned Chevron deference. That's a lot of policy and legal context to hold at once, so let's walk through the logic that helped us meme it. At the time we made this meme, the Supreme Court had recently overturned the Chevron deference ruling, which had protected the authority of federal agencies like the EPA. The ruling was in June 2024. 2 months later, the Air Force Base in Tucson contaminated the city's water supply with PFAS. And when the EPA ordered the Air Force to clean it up, they refused and cited the Chevron ruling, claiming that the EPA did not have the authority to order that cleanup. This was an alarm bell kind of moment. That pushback from the Air Force opened the door to more legal challenges against environmental regulations. So it's a complex chain of cause and effect, but the meme helped us connect those dots quickly and visually. The humor made the content shareable, but the familiar four-panel format of the Star Wars meme clearly mapped the tension between the EPA's authority and the Air Force's pushback. So viewers could understand the stakes and stakeholders in a few seconds without needing to read a full policy explainer. And that's the power of edutainment. It doesn't remove the complexity of the issues. It just makes the complexity more accessible and sparks great dialogue. And how'd it do? This was one of our first real forays into creating water-focused meme content. And this Anakin format was one part of a three-part slider that also cited the original reporting from The Guardian. So compared to our typical Instagram posts at the time, we saw a performance jump. This post got about 4 times our usual baseline of likes, and it was shared 47 times. That share number is really important because those shares are a strong signal that content is resonating and traveling beyond your immediate audience. Overall engagement reached almost 6%, well above that 1 to 3% threshold that nonprofits typically see. In terms of distribution, the post generated nearly 2,000 impressions and reached over 1,500 accounts. That put this meme on par with some of our partnered video content, which is notable considering how low lift this was to produce. So this was an early proof point for us that when we translate complex policy into a familiar format, that barrier to engagement drops. We also got some great feedback from our audience in the comments. You can see some of the appreciation of the meme itself on the screen, as well as some greater context setting from our informed audience members to provide more context. This is what you're looking for when you create edutainment content. It's the factual and the funny coming together and creating a space for good conversation that connects people to a deeper issue. So, after seeing some early positive signals from our Mimi posts, we wanted to test this more intentionally. Over the course of last year, we began producing edutainment content across our channels. This was experimentation on our end, but we were testing our thesis. If we lean into formats that feel native, engaging, and a little bit more playful, what actually happens to our performance? Well, of our 10 most engaged posts in 2025, 6 of them were pieces of edutainment content. That's a solid majority of our top performers coming in from this one content approach. And the depth of engagement was revealing too. Every single edutainment post in that top 10 exceeded a 5% engagement rate. Together, the average was 8.7. So these posts weren't doing just like slightly better. They were performing multiple times above typical expectations. Now, this doesn't mean that every meme will automatically succeed, nor does it mean that the traditional informational content isn't a key pillar of any organization's social strategy. What it does show is that when complex issues are translated into a format that audiences already enjoy interacting with, we consistently see stronger audience responsiveness. So at this point, edutainment has become a reliable tool in our social toolkit. It helps us break through the saturation, reach beyond our network, and it creates these easy entry points into the complex conversations that might otherwise be scrolled past. And very excitingly, the data is encouraging us to keep refining and expanding this approach. But we're not the only ones in the water and environmental space that have used edutainment successfully. We want to share next a couple of recent examples from others. First, I want to share this recent meme from the California Department of Water Resources. Earlier this month, of course, Bad Bunny performed at the Super Bowl, which we know is a huge cultural event, routinely one of the most watched programs of the year. So, the still image captured from the Super Bowl is what we call an image macro, or more simply, a recognizable picture with a witty caption. What I love about this is that it's very simple. It shows that reciprocal relationship between precipitation and California's snowpack. Memes like this are so useful for connecting with an audience and it simplifies a real issue in, 4 words or less. It shows that you're in the know, and it serves as a reminder that there's real people behind the organization when you make content like this. So when cultural moments like this come along, we encourage you to create this type of content if you have capacity. They can drive engagement that you might not expect, and you can still integrate your core messaging into it. And I'll pass it back to Brianna.
Yeah, we wanted to share one more example on a serious topic, a bit of news, not great news, that we got last week about the EPA rescinding the endangerment finding, which, if you're not familiar, was the scientific conclusion that fossil fuel emissions harm health, and it's kind of the legal underpinnings of regulation of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's going to make it, without it, it's going to be a lot harder to fight climate change. So in response to this terrible news, this great nonprofit, Green Latinos, published a bilingual swipe post on Instagram, and it included information about, more serious, straightforward information about what the endangerment finding was and what it meant for it to be rolled back, and how environmental justice organizations are fighting back. And then a couple of the slides also had some memes, and these are the memes that you're seeing on the screen. And we thought this was a worthwhile example to share for a few reasons. And it shows that, even in the most difficult news moments, there is still a role for edutainment to play. I also think this is a great example because it's not just edutainment, it's a supplement to another more straightforward format. And it just shows that it doesn't have to be either or. You can have both straightforward format and, your fun or playful meme. And I think that's a really smart strategy when you're dealing with difficult policy news like this. And then the third thing I think that made this a really great example is that it doesn't necessarily try to sugarcoat the terrible news in any way. It leans into the negative feelings that people might be feeling as after seeing this. It uses sarcasm to express frustration. It's not levity for levity's sake, but it's communicating genuine feelings about the news. So it doesn't feel tone deaf, um, which is really, really important. So again, this is a great example of how you can use edutainment in a rapid response moment, if you have the capacity. And, we're not necessarily suggesting that you have to use edutainment in a moment like this or even respond in a moment like this. It's just kind of an example to show how this just the breadth of how edutainment is used in different contexts. So maybe at this point you're thinking, yeah, great, Brianna, Zakia, you have convinced me. I want to make edutainment. I like SpongeBob, am ready. Well, we have some tips and resources from our work that we hope can help get you started. Um, and the first, sort of bucket of work of tips is just to start where you are. I think most folks on this call, I would imagine, are working with some limited resources and time to make fun content. But we really want to encourage you to use what you have and start where you are. Maybe you've got somebody on your team who is really good at video. Maybe you have somebody who is super funny and super sharp and just naturally, can write really quickly. Maybe you have somebody who has a really great British accent that they don't mind showing off to the world. We think it's really important to sort of tap into your existing talents and use those people. Um, and then, I think another thing to emphasize is that often in this type of work, you can use scrappiness to your advantage. Free stock footage and cheap stock footage can be really, really funny, kind of unintentionally. So lean into that. You can also lean into this sort of lack of finesse and polish and make it a thing. I included in this slide a screenshot from NPR's Planet Money's TikTok account, which is it's like, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's a really great example of this kind of intentionally scrappy style when it comes to edutainment. And the team who produced this TikTok account won an Edward R. Murrow Award, which is one of the top digital news awards out there. So it's just recognition that you can make things scrappy and they can be good and celebrated. And then, of course, you don't have to start from scratch. Uh, as Zakia has shared, memes are a really great entry point to this kind of work because the content's already there. You just have to put the words to it. TikTok and Instagram reel templates, video templates are also super helpful for the same reason. And then the last thing we wanted to share is that, some of the things that we do are just ideas that we came up with and decided to do it and then did it. Like, just cannot emphasize enough that nobody asked us to make a silly beaver video. We just wanted to do it and decided to do it. And we have the freedom to do that, and we're lucky. And if you also have, the flexibility to do that, we'd like to encourage you to do the same because it's really important to experiment. And the more you do, the more you learn about what's working for your audience. And even if it doesn't perform amazingly, that's still information that you've gained about what content is resonating with folks. So definitely encourage experimentation. And then along those lines, I think the second bucket of advice that we have for you all is just to have fun as you make things. I will say from my own professional experience making videos for maybe about a decade now, close to a decade now, I can tell you that the projects that I had the most fun making tended to perform better. And I don't really know why that is. I think people can just sense when you're having a good time and that are drawn to it. It's kind of magnetic. And I'm not the only person who's had this experience. Dylan St. Bernard, who heads up a digital media company for social change work, he recently posted about his team's Rule of Whimsy, which is just including some fun social content in the calendar. And he said that some of their highest performing content came from things that made them smile while they did it. So uh, definitely encourage having fun. We also encourage you to be yourself, be weird, be real. If you are passionate about something nerdy, lean into it. Talk about it with gusto because even if people don't understand what you're saying, they like to feel the enthusiasm. People like that. Team be weird, yes. If you want to pretend that beavers are cult leaders, do it, like just infuse a little bit of play into what you make because it helps people, it helps your work feel more approachable to people. And like the example about the endangerment finding shows, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be happy all the time. You can be a little salty, you can be a little bit spicy about a topic, just so long as it's a genuine feeling and you're using good judgment as you do that. And Zakia will talk a little bit more about this, but like as a general rule of thumb, punching up is a general like good thing to think about here if you're going to be a little bit spicy, a little bit salty. And then, the last thing is, in a crowded social media landscape, the more original and maybe weird your idea is, the fresher it's going to feel to your audience. So, we just really encourage you to experiment, try something unproven. If you're able, be a little bit unhinged. We are so here for that. So, I'll pass it on to Zakia for our last little bucket of advice.
Thank you. So yes, to make sure that your edutainment content is resonating, we've got a quick checklist that you can use to ground your work. Firstly, be realistic about what edutainment can and cannot do. While funny and silly content is effective, it's still a supplement to the work that you do, not a replacement. Sometimes the fun format doesn't fit, and that's okay. Know your audience. It's important to stay grounded in the information that your audience expects from you and what they'll actually genuinely enjoy. Don't be afraid to dig deeper into the demographics of who's already engaging with your content and which issue areas have previously performed well on your channels before. Gut check your content with others. When our team was creating the Beaver video script, we kept asking each other, hey, is this funny or do we just like it? So getting that input from across your team is really what ensures that your content will land. And building on that, don't be tone deaf. Every moment, again, does not always call for humor. Context should always guide your creative choices. Punch up. If you're using humor or satire, that's okay, but aim the joke at ineffective systems or misinformation or power structures. At the heart of a good joke is a reminder of the experiences that we share, not who to blame. Always fact check. The edu in edutainment is key. If you're simplifying an issue, make sure that that simplification still reflects the facts. Accuracy is really what builds that audience trust, and you don't want that, well, actually, commenter to pop up. Finally, stay current. Internet culture moves fast. Some memes are evergreen and can be easily made for all occasions with tools like image flip. But a meme format that was popular 6 months ago might already feel dated. So when in doubt, check in with the culturally online folks on your team to keep your formats fresh. Hopefully, at this point, you're thinking, this sounds great, but how do we actually do this? And we've got some resources for you. For memes, feel free to check out our What Do You Meme training and blog post on our site. And the lovely folks at Into Action Lab have an open source meme library that you can pull from. No need to reinvent the wheel. If you're creating graphics, we recommend Canva. We even have a Yes You Canva guide to help mission driven organizations keep things clean and on brand. If you're working with video, start simple. CapCut or even Instagram's native editing tools are more than enough to begin your experimentation. And CapCut has video templates, so again, you're not starting from scratch. And as you're experimenting and testing, we encourage you to prioritize digital accessibility with captions or alt text and follow ethical imagery practices. You guessed it, we've got handy dandy guides for both. And if you'd like a thought partner in this work, please, please, please reach out to our digital team and send a message to digital@waterhub.org. We are so happy to help you think it through.
All right. And with that, we've got about 12, 13 minutes to do a little Q&A. Before we get into that, just want to remind people that there is a survey that we'd love for you to fill out. And again, if you want support with your edutainment, please email digital@waterhub.org. That is Zakia, me, and Jessica. We will be there and responding and happy to help. And without further ado, I'm going to stop talking. And if you have a question, please throw it in the Q&A.
I'm just coming off mute again to just reiterate self-promotion here. We really appreciate y'all filling out the survey while you're sitting here and thinking about the Q&A. While it's fresh in your mind, we find the survey responses are the most specific about how we can improve. Any pitches or requests that you have for future trainings, it's very helpful. So thank you. It's in the chat and in that QR code. And also going to drop a link to sign up for the newsletter if you haven't yet, where we announce when we have these trainings. And yeah, please, please reach out to us because we can make fun things together. So yeah, I will stop talking.
I see a question in the chat. What do you think about posts that includes both English and Spanish memes in the same post or any other two languages? I think we're pro. I mean, yeah. So long as it's clear and people can understand it and it's culturally relevant, awesome. We are so here for language accessibility. And Taki, if you have other thoughts, feel free to share.
I do. I would like to note that WhatsApp is emerging as a platform that people use, specifically folks from Spanish-speaking countries. And so having an accessible meme encourages the shareability on platforms that you might not be on or might not expect. So yes, definitely 100% on having, culturally relevant and multi-language posts. More laughs for more people.
Trying to suppress the the need to, oh, will links be shared later? Yes. They absolutely will. We're going to send out an email in the next couple of days with all the links, including a link to hopefully a blog post that has everything you need and all the resources that we shared. Do you have links for stock images to avoid image issues with ownership rights? Yes, we'll include that in the email. There are quite a few options for you to use. There's some free ones, there's some really cheap ones, and we'll definitely share that. But off the top of my head, I sometimes use Pond 5. There's ones called Pexels. There's a bunch of them out there, so we'll make sure to get that to you in our email follow-up.
Oh, I do see another question about memes possibly violating copyright usage, especially if using movies or cartoons. Um, Brianna, please correct me on this, but I do believe that falls under fair use.
Yeah, fair use is a tricky thing. It's kind of like, I mean, where I've worked at different places that have had different approaches to it, and it kind of all comes down to like your legal team's comfort with, uh, kind of taking on that risk. Because I remember when I worked at Wired, we'd had a lawyer who would never tell us that there was no risk to kind of like using copyrighted material. He would often say there's low risk, and that was kind of like our go ahead green flag. So, in general, I would say, yeah, look into the fair use. There's like a few different things that criteria that you have to meet to kind of meet fair use, but then also like talk to your legal team because it sort of depends on each organization. Um, let's see. Can you speak? Let's see, who should we reach? Okay, so we have that. Yeah, just feel free to reach out to digital at WaterHub, Jillian. Any other questions that I missed?
Hey, I just wanted to jump in too, if it's all right for me to
Yes,
kind of
please.
Please.
add on to the fair usage. We took Zakia and I took a training last year with a famous meme account who goes by Organizer Memes. And he gets hired by political campaigns now to even, produce memes for candidates that are running. So he knows his stuff. And he did say that, according to his experience, memes fall under parody law. So there's not too much of a concern for copyright in his experience. So we are not lawyers, but that is what someone who does this for his living said. And yes, just want to flag that as another in addition, with that caveat that we are not lawyers.
Yeah. Just I'll add on to that. Yeah, I think just in my own experience, I think it's probably fine. But again, we are not lawyers. You should definitely check with your lawyers to make sure that they feel good about it. Cool. I'm just looking to see if we have other questions in the chat or elsewhere.
I just wanted to share one thing also from that training that I thought was clever that Zakia and I had chuckled about after with his definition. Actually, it was a definition from The Guardian, I understand, on what a meme is. It's called anarchic folk propaganda, which means anarchic, uncontrolled, and unregulated, folk for and by the people, non-hierarchical propaganda arguments that are described as jokes. So that's kind of a fun, I don't know. I love saying that. It's clever and it's interesting to me as like, again, it's a form of cultural currency that's so snack size and really for the people, truly. Yes, I will drop that in the chat. A cultural touchstone.
Mhm. Our
Uh,
modern day hieroglyphics, if you will.
yes. Um, cool. I'm dropping it in.
Thank you. I love that. Anarchic folk propaganda. So good. So good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read that Guardian article. That sounds fascinating. Right.
Any other questions?
Ooh, what are the go-to accounts you follow for inspo? That's a really good question. I definitely Western Water Girl is one that I think you can definitely check out. God, I think Earthly Education is another one we often
Yep.
look at for inspo.
Yep.
Um,
I'm gonna drop it in the chat.
yeah, Sakia, do you have others that come to
Uh,
mind?
Absolutely. I love the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District.
Mhm.
They are so sharp and funny and brilliant. Um, you
Yeah.
get such a nice, healthy mix of seeing, the work that's being done and evidence of folks being warm and human and smart and still on topic. They have such a great Instagram account, and you wouldn't expect it out of a utility, but they're great.
They
I
are
feel
great.
like it's this not the first time that we have seen a utility have a funny Instagram account, which is great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
We see
let's
Sarah shared Susie Hicks for children's climate content.
Yes,
Ooh.
absolutely. There we go. I just dropped the sewer district's account.
Yeah, they make some really, really funny stuff.
Hmm. They really get into it too. Like they'll give us a good skit, a meme. They're having fun. And because they're having fun, I have fun looking at whatever they make and learn a
Mhm.
little bit.
I also like the Climate Action Campaign's Instagram account.
Hmm.
They do some spicy memes and clever moment like cultural moment pieces of content as well.
I also think you can look outside of the climate and environmental movement for inspiration, doesn't necessarily, you can kind of adapt it to the things that you see um, to our own issues. So encourage that as well. Trying to think if there are any that come to mind off the top of my head, and there are probably not, but there's probably too many, is really what it is. But yeah, of course. Any other questions? Oh, this is a good one. Okay. Is there evidence to suggest social media holidays help engagement, or do you use them more for idea generation? Would a beaver video posted outside of Beaver Day do just as well? Excuse me. That's a really good question. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, that's a good question. Would beaver video posted outside of Beaver Day do just as well? Potentially. I don't know if we've really ever explicitly tested that, to my knowledge. Jessica, if you or Zakia, if you guys have other thoughts or other experiences that I'm not aware of, please chime in. But
What I'll say is that it's helpful to have a hook when you're creating social media content, but depending on the subject, some topics are evergreen. I've seen this uptick in beaver edits. Sometimes people will like edit footage of a beaver as if they are a fancy car, or give them like a really dramatic, like movie style edit. So I think that beavers in particular are evergreen because we love them and we need them for our ecosystems. But for other topics, it can be helpful to have a hook, a hashtag that you can use and be fed into the algorithm so that you get delivered. Um, but it depends.
yeah, that's a good point.
I
Yep,
think
I
that
do feel like beavers are evergreen.
yeah.
Um, Animals in general are usually something that people like to see online. Sorry, Jessica, you're about to say something.
No, I was just going to say that yeah, I agree that it's a both and where we have definitely produced content for a hook with like a hashtag that speaks to that moment, right? To disseminate as a tool for it to get more visibility as people are talking about the topic that day and maybe more prone to share, whether that's through a social media toolkit or, through their feeds themselves and it's surfacing and feeling on brand for the day, whether it's an Imagine a Day Without Water push or we've done releases for World Water Day, for example. But yes, I don't think that we should limit ourselves to feel like we have to wait for the observance, otherwise it doesn't work. because it can be a bit of a chicken and egg because it's good to have that thematic content on a day that people might expect it, but also you are going to be competing for attention as a lot of folks are pushing stuff out. So I encourage people to consider it. We for to have on your content calendar when we populate our content calendar every year, we have all the observances on there, not because we intend to produce something every time, but if it feels aligned, right media moment, right hook, it can be a helpful thing just to anticipate if you're trying to build towards something in advance.
Great. Well, with that, I think we're at time. Thank you all for joining us, and be on the lookout for a follow-up email from us. And just a last little plug to fill out our survey, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.